Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the Employment Committee. As usual, the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and will also be available for viewing after the meeting. The link is available on the Council's website. Can I please ask that all members and officers have their microphone on mute until they wish or are invited to speak. I've received no apologies today. Mr. Harrison Fowler is going to be joining this meeting. Mr. Fowler has replaced Mr. Andrew Thorpe on the committee. Okay, so firstly, we need to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 18th of September 2025. I move that these are taken as read, confirmed and signed. Does everybody agree, please?
Point 3 on those minutes.
Sorry, I've just been advised we're just confirming the accuracy at the moment. So if it's a question regarding feedback on that.
Just to confirm, on the 18th of September, I asked a question about the staff increase in the last 3 years and also what departments had arisen in the last 3 years. And that was on the 18th of September. And I just wondered if we had any answers to those. Thank you.
We're just checking the accuracy of the minutes at this point. If it's a question about an action, we'll need to discuss that outside of the meeting.
Thank you.
Chair, can I raise a point of order?
Yep.
Yeah, just nothing against Mr. Fowler, by the way. It's just the position that he holds. I'm surprised that we have a cabinet member as part of this committee, especially when we're going to be talking about employee pay, and his portfolio looks after the budget of the council, but also terms and conditions and all the rest of it as well. I just see, is there a conflict of interest where he will be debating here and then potentially in there? So it's just one of those. It's just the portfolio that he holds. That's all. Thank you.
I don't know. Do you want to advise, Damien?
So we've had a cabinet member for resources sat on the committee for numerous years. It's there's no conflict within the constitution on that.
Thank you. Right then, so firstly, where are we? We've confirmed the minutes. Next it's question time. So I've received no questions from members of the public. Questions asked by members. I've received no questions from members. Urgent items, I've not been notified of any urgent items. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have any interest in respect of any of the items on the agenda? I've received no petitions. So our first substantive item on the agenda is the pay policy statement. So it's pages 11 to 26. Sorry, the pay policy statement for 2026-2027. Lucy Littlefair, Assistant Director of People, Property and Business Services, will present this report. Lucy is joined by Andrew Stewart, Head of People Services, and Caroline Rowe, Strategic HR/OD Team Manager today. Lucy, please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so the purpose of this report is to seek the approval of the Employment Committee for the Council's Pay Policy Statement 2026-2027. Under the Localism Act, local authorities are required to produce a pay policy statement for each financial year, and that has to be approved by the full County Council. The Localism Act is really clear about what the statement must set out, and that's around the remuneration of chief officers, remuneration of our lowest paid employees, and then the relationship between those two groups. And we're required to publish our pay policy statement before the 1st of April 2026. So the key points, I guess, in terms of the actual policy statement, so it includes information about our job evaluation process, our grading of posts, how we determine when additional payments should be made, and the eligibility of employees to those, our pay ratio, which takes our highest paid employee and the mean average salary of the council's workforce. It confirms that there's no distinction between chief officers and other employees in relation to pension entitlements and severance pay. And it also sets out our approach to the re-engagement of former employees. The pay structure that's included within the statement incorporates the nationally agreed pay awards of 3.2%, which were applied to grades 2 to 22 in August 2025, following consultation with Employment Committee. The recommendation to the committee is that you're asked to approve the pay policy statement for submission to the full council. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, please? Mr. Innes, please.
Yeah, just how often is this policy reviewed? I see it was last reviewed in 2019. And what's the process for review, please?
Just to confirm, this policy is reviewed on an annual basis and it comes to full council on an annual basis. The pay structure, the pay spine that we currently have was reconfigured in 2019 following a significant change as a result of the pay award of that year. But the pay policy itself is looked at on an annual basis.
And what's the process for review? I guess we're being shown a document today. Has this been agreed with? At what level has this been agreed with? Is this the first review by councillors?
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the question, I guess, properly. So in terms of the actual policy, we're bringing that today in terms of to the Employment Committee. But prior to that, yeah, if there were any amendments to it, we would have discussed those with the recognised trade unions. Yeah, prior to, so we do that on a yearly basis. But the pay policy statement, if you like, brings together a lot of different policies. So we have a policy on market premium, we have a policy on job evaluation, yeah. And then the statement actually just brings all that information, yeah, together. So as far as I'm aware, there have been no changes to the actual policies in the last 12 months since it came to committee.
Thank you. And sorry, can I just confirm? And after it's been approved here today, it then goes to full council. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mear, please.
Cheers. Thank you, Chair. My point is on the lowest paid scales at the moment and minimum wage. Obviously, minimum wage is due to go up to 12.71 in April. And our lowest grades are 12.65. So yes, this is for this year and not next year. But how are we going to address minimum wage creep that's creeped up and then all along the spine as well to make everybody else's differential the same? Is it we need another review like we did in 2019 to get that done? Because yeah, it's just one of those. It's a difficult one, but we want to make sure we pay fairly. But also there is competition out there for staff, regardless of what the media might make out. It is difficult to hire in local government, very much so in certain grades. So yeah, it's just how we're going to address that issue, really. Thank you.
And you're right, it is a challenge, yeah. So you'll see in terms of our lower graded staff, I think right up until potentially a grade 8, yeah, there's very little differential to a certain extent, yeah, within those posts. It is something that we've got, to be honest, on our work programme for this year. Obviously, you have to work very closely with finance colleagues. On that, we're aware that the trade unions have submitted their submission in terms of the pay award as well for 26-27. We've got to be mindful of that, bring all that information together and basically then evaluate whether that means we need to do an exercise like we did in 2019 around that pay structure. And obviously, as we go into the kind of new year, we'll become a bit clearer around those kind of things and we'll obviously be engaging with the committee on it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. It is becoming a challenge, yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, please.
Is it possible we can ask for this to be addressed by Cabinet at this point? Thank you.
I need to take some advice on that.
I was just looking at the localism. I believe this is not an executive function. It's a full council function, which is why it's got to be approved by full council. So there's a separation of powers between cabinet responsibilities and council responsibilities, and this is one that has to be done by full council, not the executive. So no, it's not something that the executive have an input into.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Charlesworth.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the senior officer table. when a post becomes vacant, which is topical at the moment, I'm sorry, I've got to take this.
Sorry, I think we're just going to adjourn for a few moments. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to continue and we're going to go straight to Mr. Charlesworth for his question, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, it was about the table on chief executive's pay. When a post becomes vacant, do we automatically go to that pay line, or do we review what we're paying for that particular post? Do we look at it afresh, or do we just assume, well, there's the pay line, assistant chief exec, 98,000, that's what they're going to get? Or is there any negotiation in that process? Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so obviously the posts as they stand at the moment. So, for example, assistant director targeted early help, that post will have been through job evaluation, which will have determined the grade for it. Yeah. So if it's a like for like replacement, then that's how the post would be advertised, because it's based on that evaluation. If you wanted to make any changes to it, if you wanted to make any changes to the job description, then you would put it through the job evaluation process, and that may dictate, a different salary for. So it's the job evaluation process that dictates, the salary for any different post.
Let's come back on that, please, Chair. So I did many years ago sit on the chief exec recruitment process, and we did at Ownby and Wigston come down on a lower figure, and then time increases it to the maximum we would pay for a chief exec. But we reviewed each time we had a new chief exec, and we didn't just say, well, it's 234,000, that's what you're going to get. I thought there would be a process that you would look at that and say, well, that's the top spine rate. Surely we start somewhere lower, and this person, graduates the pay. That's what I would have thought.
So most of our grades, as you'll see in the pay structure, except for some of the lower grade posts, largely because of kind of the impact of national minimum wage, have either 3 or 4 pay points. So that's how it happens. Anybody who's brought into the organisation, I think that's set out in the pay policy, should start at the bottom of the pay grade, and then they work their way up in terms of those spinal points. And if there's obviously any concerns around performance, it's not, we don't operate performance related pay within the council, but obviously if there are any performance issues, then they would be addressed with that individual.
And you are talking about senior management there?
Yes, exactly the same.
Thank you. Great question. So Mr. Fowler.
Thanks, Chair. I guess the question I have is, obviously we understand that it's the pay grading system is linked to this sort of external spinal banding. My question is, what are the legal implications of it and the statutory requirements? Is it a guidance-based thing that we're meant to follow it as a public organisation, as a local authority, or is it as strict as you have to follow this and it's not open to interpretation in any way in terms of the procedure? Thanks.
Can I just clarify which element? Are you talking about the pay scale or the pay policy that we've got?
Yeah, both really. I mean, if you could elaborate the difference between the scope of either, if there is a difference, then that's fine. But I guess I mean both. Is obviously we currently pay based on these banding systems. What I'm effectively trying to say is, do we have to?
Okay, so there's there's a national pay scale, for local government employees, and all of our terms and conditions are set out in the Green Book. But Leicestershire took the decision a number of years ago to actually have a local pay scale. So it kind of mirrors, to a certain extent, it's very similar to the nationally agreed pay scale, but it is specific to Leicestershire County Council. So that's the pay scale that you'll find on page 12, of the pack. So that's been determined. Okay, so that's been determined, and governs kind of all the decisions we make about the various different kind of roles and grades that we've got within the organisation. We are still part of the national negotiations, so whatever's agreed at a national level, in terms of pay awards, then we apply that, whether it's a percentage or whatever it is, to our local pay scales. In terms of the actual pay policy itself and things like, I don't know, incremental progression or market premiums or allowances for maybe night work, all those types of things, then we, within Leicestershire, we are able to make any local agreements with the trade unions, to kind of change those. So to answer, I suppose, to your question, to a certain extent, it's within our gift locally. It's good practice to obviously have a pay scale because that dictates. We do have to have a job evaluation scheme in place as a public sector authority. But yeah, we do have the ability to make local agreements on certain aspects of it.
Thank you. We've got, Mrs. Seaton.
Thank you. It's really just for me to understand. I've been out of the workforce for so long. I've forgotten about pay grades, etc., and so on. So vastly gone up since my experience with the NHS. But so I'm looking at let's just take the chief executive department, and the salary there is 234. Then we go down to the grades, and 234 is at the top of the grade. So does it automatically, I think that's the question, wasn't it? Does it automatically go to the top of the grade, or if we were setting on, which we have done, does it start at the bottom and then it can go up, or has it just started at that and we create another grade above that?
No, so any new appointees in any part of the pay structure always start at the bottom, unless, to a certain extent, maybe they were coming from another local authority and you wanted to kind of match in terms of, the grades. You've got that discretion, but there's a process you need to go through to get that authorised. But so for example, our new chief exec, the expectation is that, they would start at the bottom pay grade.
Thank you. Mr. Cook, please.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask the question of when a business is not doing so well, and I've been in one of those companies, I'm sure everyone's experienced it, where you have an annual pay rise each year that's looked at, negotiated through the unions, etc. I do remember experiencing pay freezes. Can I ask the question, and can you get back to me on when the last time the county council didn't have a pay rise and they had a pay freeze due to circumstances, etc.? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fine. Yeah, we had a number of years where there was, a pay freeze. So I need to go back into my memory and find out when that was. Yeah.
Thank you. Any more questions? Oh gosh. So Mr. Innes first, and Mr. Charlesworth. Thank you.
I'm not sure who to ask, but what's the implication if we do not approve this policy?
Well, we are obliged as a council by law to pass this before the end of the 31st of March next year. That's the cut-off date we have to do. So that's a full council decision before the 31st of March. And there's only one full council meeting before the 31st of March, which is in February. So it needs to be decided then. So if you wish to have it back to Employment Committee before then to discuss again, that's fine. But it would need to have a resolution to full council before February, because we've got to have a pay policy statement in place by then.
And just to check, what would the process be? You would take it back, and what would you do?
I suppose I'd need some guidance on the aspects of actually the pay policy statement that you wanted us to review.
Thank you. Mr. Charlesworth, please.
Yeah, I've been here 20 years. I'm not sure whether we actually publish the actual pay of senior management, because although the top of the spines are printed there, there's possibly a potential within the various schemes within the pay policy that the chief exec could earn more than 234,000. Couldn't various bits and bobs or other members of senior management could earn more than that top scale with various allowances, bonuses. Oh no, they don't pay bonuses, but other items.
That's the actual pay. Yeah, so it states
that's the actual
pay.
pay.
Includes any taxable benefits, lease car payments, any of those types. So that's the actual pay. So you'll see, to a certain extent, there is some variation, particularly at the assistant director level, where some people are, at a lower point on the grade, some people are higher just because they've been here longer.
So
This is the actual pay.
that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goughton, please.
Yeah, thank you. I understand what Mr. Charles was getting at. There are other aspects to it. So, for example, if the chief executive is the electoral registration officer, then there is an additional payment for that. I'm not sure about the lieutenancy. Perhaps someone could advise on that, because you have to have the lieutenancy to support that role. So there are other things that can be given as a duty to a particular post for which they will get additional remuneration. So perhaps we ought to understand what the complete package is, because we agreed it yesterday, effectively.
That's like teachers extra.
I think we'd need further information on that, on exactly what other roles and top-ups there are, but that's the situation.
I believe
Sorry.
it's just the electoral registration officer payment that for a chief executive's role, having just looked at the new chief executive's contract.
I asked you what the position is with the lieutenancy going forward, because that is a duty on this authority.
It may well be a duty, but I don't think there's any additional payment.
It's not,
It's not
right.
reflected in the contract anyway.
That's very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you. Mr. Fowler, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just to kind of flesh out Mr. Innes's question to some extent, obviously, I gather that from what Fiona said, that we obviously do need to sort of pass something and make sure that there is an agreement in place by March 31st, I think you said. That's fine. But obviously, kind of the way I'm hearing it is that we have to pass something no matter what. What actually is within the scope of our discussion here in terms of decisions that can actually be made? Or are we just kind of talking it through for the sake of it, basically? Can I get some more clarity on what difference we can actually make when it comes to what's actually being passed here, if we have no choice in passing it?
But full council has to set the pay policy statement. This committee has delegated powers to make the recommendation to full council. So you can amend, suggest amendments, pass amendments, whatever resolution you send to full council for the pay policy statement is what they will consider. So you can make amendments here in this committee.
Thank you. Mr. Innes, please.
I think I'll just put my cards on the table. I think I will not approve it today and push it to the next scrutiny to give us a chance to fully understand what we are actually voting through. That's my position.
So scrutiny scrutinises decisions of the executive, of the cabinet, not decisions of the employment committee. So this is entirely within your gift in terms of looking at decisions. So it's not something that scrutiny would look at.
Sorry, I'm in the next employment committee. Sorry, I'm still learning all the the terms.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, please. Okay, so we've got a motion, so we need to have a vote. Sorry, all those in favour, could you please raise your hand? Okay, thank you very much. That's carried. Okay, brilliant. Sorry about that. Okay, so we go to item 8. This is the workforce report for 2025-26. It's the Q2 update. It's on pages 27 to 38 of your agenda pack. Lucy Littlefair will present this report. Lucy, please go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to wait for Damien to pull up. What I've done is actually done an accompanying presentation too, because I think that's sometimes quite useful. Obviously, it's behind me, so I'll have to just have a look on the screen. 2 seconds. We're up. Okay, thank you. So Damien, happy for you to move to the next slide. So this slide sets out in terms of which would be, regular feature of bringing to the employment committee. So you can just keep an eye on, any increases in headcount, FTE, that type of thing. So latest stats that we're providing there is a headcount of, the 5,869, which has a full-time equivalent of 4,893. And what I've done is under each of the graphs just set out, which again, you'll get used to as to why we do FTE alongside headcount. We've shown 3 years data because I think that's important that you can start to see in terms of what some of our trends might be. And what the data is really showing is that whilst the headcount has reduced from January 23 to October 2025, actually the FTE has pretty much remained the same. So that would suggest that within the organisation we have more of our staff doing increased hours, and means that we've got kind of overall a slightly kind of increased workforce capacity. So fewer actual headcount, but the same workforce capacity because of actually the fewer part-timers. And that's why we track both. Damien, if you don't mind moving on to the next slide, just gives you a breakdown of how that's tracking in terms of the different departments, the different headcount. And I think that again, what we need to do is track for the next meeting. It would be fair to say that this is an evolving piece for us. We haven't previously provided this information to Employment Committee, but we're very keen to make sure that we are providing some statistical information for you going forward, so you can start to see trends. So this is really just a snapshot in terms of where we're at with the chief execs and all the various different ones. But I think as members, you're quite keen to see across the various different departments of where we might have any increases or decreases going forward. So this is work in progress against the two. What I've included in the next slide, because I think it was a question that we got asked actually at the last meeting, was some information on agency staff. I think one of the questions we were or comments that was made last time was that almost it's fine kind of presenting your head count, but actually you've got these agency staff as well, which you're not representing. So this doesn't come out particularly well here. But we'll make sure we share it afterwards. But ultimately, that shows the data from November 23 up until October 25. And on average, we've got about 300 agency staff working for us in the authority. So we almost need to, quite happy to give you that data going forward. Also, it shows you as to which departments, those staff are sitting in, and maybe start to give you some more kind of deeper dive and explanation as to the types of roles that are sitting within those departments going forward. It is a focus of Newton's at the moment, so we're doing a lot of work with them on agency, on spend, as well as why is it to cover sickness, is it to cover vacancies, all those types of things. So as we do more work with Newton's on that, I'll make sure that's equally fed through in terms of Employment Committee. The next slide, which I know is really of keen interest to the committee and ourselves, is around absence. So you've got a number of different kind of charts there around what we use FTE. So in the public sector, traditionally they've always used average FTE absence, and that's what we use to benchmark ourselves. But quite happy to use the kind of metric that the private sector use, which is around, well, what's the percentage of your workforce that's absent at any point in time. So this sets out in terms of what the FTE absence is. You'll see as we go into the departmental breakdown, we've included the percentage there as well. So whereas in terms of, as I put on the slide, really overall absence trend, so we did see a gradual decrease between 23 and 2024 in terms of that FTE, But as you'll see in the bits that I've highlighted, we're starting to see an upwards trend. And I think at the last committee, we articulate that that's and included in the report is what's happening nationally as well, particularly around mental health. As you'd expect to see, there are seasonal patterns amongst it. And then we've obviously got those year-on-year comparisons. Next slide gives you that departmental breakdown, and that's where we've kind of included the percentages. So you can see how we're tracking in terms of it's sitting anywhere between 3%, 4.29 is the highest percentage across there. And what I'd like to do is for the next committee in February is do a really deep dive in terms of adults and communities. So that's our highest. So it's 11.19 FTE at the moment. Previously, we've done things like this with the committee before. So I think, you know, you'd be really quite interested to see the nature of the roles, you know, who is it within adults and communities to a certain extent, where, you know, are there any trends there in terms of the, you know, the types of roles, types of individuals, maybe, you know, even more want to do a little bit of profile in terms of the age of individuals, reasons for absence, so that you really get an understanding, I guess, of where our concerns lie, if you like, in terms of the variety of absence. And then we can work our way through. We'd probably pick children's or environment and transport as the next kind of deep dive there. Next one is all around those kind of reasons. So it has been a decrease between Q1 and Q2 in terms of stress, depression, mental health, down to 23.83, but it still remains the most, you know, the main reason why staff are absent. But equally, we started to see a little bit of a rise in terms of the musculoskeletal issues. Again, if we start to draw out, particularly, you know, if we're looking at ENT, particular roles which have, you know, lifting and handling, those types of things, I'd be interested to see whether it is those individuals that are suffering, what we might need to do then from a health and safety point of view. You can tell, oh my God, we're all starting to get affected by seasonal illnesses. You struggle to come across somebody at the moment who's either not had it or got it at the moment. So yeah, we are taking a bit of a hit on that. That'll flow through in our Q3 stats. Also digestive issues and back and neck problems issues. So we are generally seeing a kind of an increasing trend at the moment. And we need to, you know, do some targeted intervention. We've got a lot of kind of wellbeing support in there at the moment, but we need to, you know, see what more we can do, because obviously it's got a huge cost to the organisation when staff are absent, not only in terms of sick pay, but also in cover for them where that's absolutely necessary. And then, yeah, the final two, we've got HR open cases. So as you'd expect, if you've got an increase in absence rate, you also start to see an increase in terms of us needing to manage those cases. Number of disciplinary cases reduced, grievances have written, but you do need to appreciate that across, obviously, you know, virtually 6,000 head count, these still are very low numbers of cases. Yeah, you could argue that's, you know, good management, or yeah, to a certain extent, you know, we need to understand as to whether, particularly, I do believe that we're dealing with all of our absence cases, yeah, in there, but and that we do pick up our kind of disciplinary grievances, but they are low in terms of our overall numbers. And then finally, just our APR compliance rates, which still remain a challenge for us in terms of those yearly performance meetings. You'll see that in the report, half the battle is that we don't, managers do their performance reviews offline, so it's kind of like more of a paper-based system. Then they have to remember to go onto their HR system to record them. And what we find is when we actually then contact managers, they say, well, I did it, I've done it, here's the paperwork to prove it, but I've just forgotten to put it on. So the team are looking at as to how we could have a more integrated approach to that. So yeah, so that's just a bit of a snapshot in terms of where we're at the moment. There's definitely more work, more improvement we can do on that. And we hope as we go through the next employment committees, we can give you more rich data and analysis.
Thank you. I think I'm really pleased to hear about the work that's being done around the agency workforce. I think that's great. So I'm going to open up for questions. I think Mrs. Broadley was first.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is very interesting because prior to this election, I can't remember exact which employment committee it was, that I requested that by department we knew who, how many grievances, disciplinaries, suspensions, garden leave capabilities were within each department. And it does relate to sickness as well, because if you've got a grievance against you or you feel you've been bullied or whatever, it's going to affect whether you're going to be at work, whether you're working to your full capacity, whatever. I also wanted to know how long, because there is a time frame of dealing with grievances or disciplinaries. And I accept that, you know, you've called somebody to a disciplinary, they might be off sick and whatever, but there's got to be a limit to it because of the stress that it causes all the people involved. And I'm asking this because it is a way of saving some money. You know, if people are stressed and whatever, if people are on garden leave, they're getting paid for doing nothing basically because of things. I'm not saying there is anybody, I don't know, because we haven't got the facts and figures that we were told we would get. So I'm asking, can we have it detailed by departments? How many grievances, how many, I don't need to know what it's about, so it's not breaking anybody's confidentiality, but, and also how long that particular case has been going on.
So yeah, apologies for not providing that. So we've done it at the high level at the moment. We definitely hold that data. Yeah, absolutely. We just need to check that it doesn't kind of, because of some of our departments, if they're smaller departments, by releasing that data that you wouldn't be able to necessarily identify, but I think it should be fine and we can produce that for the next meeting. Yeah, so I've captured in terms of the departmental breakdown and then almost like the kind of how well we're doing in terms of, you know, we're supposed to have completed, you know, a grievance within these sorts of timescales and how well we're doing against that. So yeah, no, happy to do that.
You also stated that you're going to be looking at each department. You mentioned adults and communities. Will you be taking into account the fact that adults and communities basically is a frontline service? You work with adults that could be, you know, coughs, colds, flus, whatever. Even children and families you work in, you know, I've got a 4-year-old granddaughter. I've got a terrible cough because of her. She goes to school. We all, you know, anybody who is a parent or a grandparent understands that you pick up things. But we've got to take into account that in adults and communities, they're more frontline dealing with the with people that are likely to have problems than somebody sitting in an office, although they can bring it in from their families. But I need to make sure that you take that into account, the type of job and whether they're likely to get sick because of their job.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, even at a departmental level, it'd be absolutely ridiculous to compare chief exec's department, for example, wouldn't it, with adults or with ENT? They're just completely different nature of roles to a certain extent. So yeah, so no, absolutely, that's what we want to do. My plan is to actually the HR business partner for that area who knows the department inside out. So, you know, we'll be absolutely, you know, be able to answer any specific questions you've got. Will be in attendance as well, and we'll give that, hopefully we'll give that real flavour of actually the challenges within adults are, it's our social workers, or actually no, it's heart, or do you understand me? To give it and give you a sense of, and we kind of get it because that the nature of their role includes, and as I've said, you know, it could be it's lifting and handling, it could be, yeah, a lot of interaction with the public, those types of things. Yeah.
Thank you. I've got Mr. Fowler next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, so I'll take them one by one if you don't mind. The first one is on the agency staff, and I'll echo the Chair's compliments for getting that sorted, because it is important we look at it, and I know Newton are looking at it in a kind of deep dive way, which is good. Do we have, for now though, just out of curiosity, a kind of annual cost per head for agency staff? Obviously, I understand because it will be different roles that will kind of have some variance to it anyway, but I'd just be curious to see what the average cost is per head for the agency staff.
Yeah, well, check with my finance colleagues, but we've got the costs, I've got the head count, so we should be able to do that. And we should be able to do that breakdown by department as well. Yeah, because I imagine what you're paying a surveyor and E&T to a certain extent, as opposed to maybe a social worker, there's going to be that variation. So it might be useful to do it, but it's a departmental breakdown, because I think it's a bit like the absence. They're very different roles, aren't they, that you're bringing people in to do.
Yeah, no, thanks. That'll be useful. And then the second one is on the absence rate of the 3.48%, using obviously the private sector metric. How do we compare, if we have the figures, to other local authorities in that respect? Are we on a similar level, higher, lower? Just be interested to know.
I don't know off the top of my head, if I'm absolutely honest.
We've done a comparison within the table, so we're showing that public sector services as an average percentage is at 3.8%. So we are performing better as a public sector authority. Could we do better? Yes, because the private sector is at about 2.8%. So, but that's why I think it's important to note the variance between the departments. Because also, if you look at the NHS, they're at about 4.7. So if you're comparing adults, comparable organisations providing similar services. So there is a table in the appendix itself that has given a breakdown of the FTE equivalent percentage to try and give that to know where we fit in the scale of things.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So I've got Mr. Cook next, please.
Thank you, Chair. On the subject of absences, it seems quite worrying that there is so many absences, and I know that's an everyday thing in every environment. Thank you, Andrew. We had a conversation quite a while ago about reasons for absence. Quite shocking, really, if I were to be totally honest, the absence reasons. And also there's a lot of agency staff there. With the mental health thing, the question I'd like to ask, and I think it wouldn't be a bad idea, is the presentation. And the question I'd like to ask is, if somebody decides, or not decides the wrong word, feels they've got mental health issues, genuine mental health issues, what's the formality? What do you accept? Is it like the old days where it's a sick note? I know you do the well-being, which is fantastic what you do there. But there's a lot of expense there, and there's a lot of people, as you say, it's quite high on the agenda, mental health. I'd also like to know the length of time they're allowed off on full pay before it's looked at. I just think, as much as you're doing your best, and I'm not denying there's people with mental health, I'm probably one of them. But it is, if we were to be honest around these tables, it's something that's been abused around the world, not just here in the County Halls. So I think it's something we need to understand. So I would be asking the formality of, how do we know they've got mental health? Are they checked at the doctors? Is there someone? You do your bit when they get here, but then do they get full pay for 6 months that it's reduced? And what assessment do they get? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I'll take those points separately. So in terms of individuals, the same as you're able to self-certify, aren't you, for your first kind of 7 days? And at that point, to a certain extent, the individual may or may not have disclosed, possibly sometimes in terms of mental health, isn't it? Sometimes you get actually somebody might give one reason, but actually because they're struggling with their mental health, it takes you a little while to tease out as to actually what's going on. So, but we record from day one as to what they're telling us is the reason. Obviously, then if the individual's going to have kind of more time off, they would require a certificate from the doctor, and that equally states on that. And then we would use that, and we would then update our record. So to a certain extent, yeah, it is. We, at that point, we're not doing any kind of checking, if you like, because you're trusting your employees, aren't you? And obviously the professionals in terms of them being able to provide that certification. What you then do is, though, that we've got an attendance management policy, which, if I use the example of mental health, they often are where people have got, taken a few weeks off, aren't they? Possibly even longer in terms of it. And the policy is really clear as a manager as to what you need to do after certain timescales or certain concerns that you might have yeah, about that individual. So we talk about that there's kind of an informal stage for the first 4 weeks, yeah, of the policy where you're talking to that individual, you're asking them to keep in regular contacts. We all know that that's, you know, you're more likely to return to work, aren't you, if you kind of, you know, you're getting that contact from your manager. So within those 4 weeks, we're really sussing out as to kind of what's really happening here with that individual, talking to them about what can we do to help you get back into work. Yeah. If then that absence then starts to kind of formalize, sometimes you get that sense because you get longer sick notes. Yeah, it's not unusual to get a whole month that a doctor would sign somebody off because they feel that they are there unwell, is that we would then kick in with an occupational health referral. And that's, I guess, a little bit to your first question about how do you check? Yeah, so the individual would see occupational health. We'd ask a certain amount of questions and want that advice back from, again, occupational health. The reason why we do occupational health is about, as an organisation, as managers, we want to know, it's all about what do we need to do to be able to facilitate a return to work for that individual. Yeah, and they're the questions kind of we're asking. In terms of our process, there's various different kind of stages to it, which are aligned almost, you know, people do have to present in front of a panel. Yeah, if their absence continues, and ultimately, you know, if they didn't return to work, they could well be dismissed from the organisation. Sick pay scheme, which is the national terms and conditions, is that individuals can have up to 6 months full pay, 6 months half pay, dependent upon your length of service. Yeah, but that's the maximum that you would get.
Thank you for that. They're the answers I expected. It reminds me when I was young at work, and we used to get somebody to ring up and say, you ring up and tell them I'm sick, I've got an headache. Joking apart, mental health is a serious issue, and I thank you for that. And it's not something that you just get over. It's something you have to live with or learn to live with. So I'm not here to criticise that. I'm here to worry about the ones that are using that, as I said. And I'm assuming what you've already said there is you have things like PDRs, personal development reviews, and you're giving them a chance to give their views on how they're feeling and giving them that support, which is fantastic. So I think you've answered my questions. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I've got Mr. Charlesworth next, and then I've got Mr. Meir. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions and a comment. On page 36, reasons for absence, at the bottom, not disclosed. I mean, I thought return to works were a confidential process. So I can't understand why you wouldn't give a reason for your absence. So I don't accept that people shouldn't disclose their reason for an absence, because it's part of the process and part of the understanding as well. And on the next page, number of open HR cases, I presume that refers to individuals, not multiple people with multiple cases sort of thing, if you see what I mean, people with individuals with multiple cases, because that's over 500 open HR cases, which is getting on for 10% of the workforce, which is a worry. Are they taking too long to resolve? Is there an issue with staff around dealing with them? And that leads on to my other point. I don't think we should ever tacitly accept, if we see 10% in a particular department for absence, or 10 days, whatever it is, we should never accept that. We should always strive and drive to reduce that through the process. And that brings me on to my final point, occupational health. I don't think this committee knows enough about what occupational health really does. So a deep dive into occupational health in a paper here would be useful, please.
Yep, no problem. So in terms of the not disclosed, if I'm honest, I think some of that happens at the point that the individual rings in, yeah, to their manager, and may not be disclosing at that point, yeah, as to the reason why that they're off. It does sound slightly strange, I absolutely admit, as to how would that conversation go. Yeah, no, absolutely. It could well be just that the manager then, everyone has to have a return to work interview when they come back, and that they're then not updating the system. Yeah, so they've gone in, they've just they've registered the absence, they're not entirely clear, or it could be a multitude of different things. You're only allowed to pick one, on it. So it could be various different issues.
Pick the worst one.
Pick the worst one, absolutely, as to what's going on. But you're absolutely right. We try our best. We try to educate our managers. Managers all, it's mandated that they have to go through our attendance management policy to tell them, that you must get a reason, because that's part of it. Goes back to Mr. Cook's. You don't want it to be too easy, do you, to ring in? To ring in, you've got to be able to explain why you're absent from work. Absolutely. So, totally accept that, there is work to be done on the kind of not disclosed, bit of it, and what's going on quite with managers on there. In terms of the individual cases, then the reason why that's at 500 is that those cases are still logged. So if somebody has triggered, if we call it, so that they've had 3 absences within, I can't remember the exact certain period, or they've been off for longer than 4 weeks, those types of things, then they go on to, if you like, the attendance management process. But also what happens is when they come off, they still stay under review. Okay. So those numbers will be people who, to a certain extent, are still under review. Yeah. So their attendance is improved, but we still just keep an eye on how things are going. Yeah. Absolutely agree with the strive to reduce. Absence is always one of the organisation's biggest challenges. Yeah, absolutely is. Yeah. I could make lots of comments. About that. I'm more than happy to bring something on occupational health. Probably will involve our health and safety colleagues. They manage that contract and have got all the rich data around the types of referrals and stuff that we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you.
And we really push hard with that occupational health. It is a key part of our process. So we make sure that we're asking the pertinent questions, really, of the physicians who see the individual.
Thank you. Mr. Meyer, please.
Yes, thank you. Most of my questions have been answered, but the one I wanted to raise is obviously adult social care has one of the highest percentages. Is there anything targeted to that department or that directorate to deep dive to see what are the issues causing the sickness? Is it 1 or 2 people being off for a longer time or a period of time and then going back again? Or is it to do with workload, caseload, whatever it might be, a deep dive just to understand why it's nearly 1% higher than everybody else? And then if so, then we could probably reverse and find out if there's mitigations that we can put in place. So is that work being undertaken? If not, do you think that will be beneficial for our staff, but also for the council itself? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So the HR business partner for adults and communities, spends an awful lot of her time kind of focusing on that kind of deep dive. And I think that's why I'd like her to come along and give you kind of, that information about the types of support that they are putting in place for those individuals. She'll be able to kind of describe, is it short-term absence that's really causing us the issues, 1 or 2 days here, or actually we've got some more fundamental issues, possibly due to the nature of the roles, possibly due to stress, those types of things. They mean that we've got people on long-term sick and that some of those cases are proving more difficult to get the people to return to work. So, I haven't got the detail. I'm not close enough to the detail at the moment in terms of exactly what's happening. I've got, I know the nature of the roles, and I kind of understand as to why they may be struggling more than maybe other departments. But let's get Kerry along to the next meeting and then she can give us that, deep dive, if you like.
Thank you. I've got Mr. Cook next, please.
Thank you. I remember the times, again, reflecting back to when I was at work. I don't think I ever recall anyone actually using, I don't want to say the excuse because it's not an excuse of the stress. Mental health is a serious issue. But it's massive. It's out there now and it seems to be quite common from an HR point of view. Managers. Obviously, there's a hell of a lot of departments. Managers, I'm assuming, are briefed and kept up to date with training. I'm a great believer in prevention better than cure. If any of my staff are showing signs, and what training do they get? If I can spot signs of anyone that's struggling, if they were sat in this room and struggling to listen to you guys, these things are there. And I think prevention is better than cure when we're talking about the amount of staff that's not coming into work for mental health. So I just wondered what sort of training and how often that's updated. Thank you. Yes,
absolutely. We do training on it. For for our managers, particularly around it. We have things that they can access as well in terms of like stress risk assessments, yeah, so that their activities actually they can undertake across the whole of their team if they're just starting to get a sense that they can feel stress levels kind of rising, and then they can get a bit of kind of an action plan. That's really helpful for staff as well, because sometimes you just want it recognised, don't you, actually, that things are really tough. I think some of our we've obviously got a counselling service, yeah, which is really well used, and I think that's superb for it's it's anonymous, people can self-refer, managers don't need to be involved, and also we get a sense of why people, yeah, and so many different reasons, and often people are presenting with a lot of different reasons. It's financial, it's relationships, it's lots and lots of different combinations. And what we've got to try and do is understand as an employer, what impacts can we make when actually it's not all about the work environment in any way, shape or form. Some of this is about what's going on at home, what's going on in kind of society, and where can we actually make a difference. Because you're right, it's a national, probably a global issue at the moment, isn't it? At the moment, but managers, they do, because it's such a concern. What we are now, 23% of our absences, yeah, are due to mental health. Yeah, they receive training on it. HR colleagues work with them, so if a case comes in, we're always looking to spot and maybe help and share, because not everybody's as good, yeah, at being able to spot it, and there's others. So yeah, keep focus.
Thank you. Any final questions? Oh, sorry, Mrs. Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. As always, the problems I have with reading data like this is because the personal link has gone, and you're not looking at people anymore. You're looking at percentages, and I have real difficulty with percentages and working out percentages, but linking them to a particular department. So if I just take the percentage of full-time days lost by absence and their reasons, so stress and depression, it would be 25 in 100 days are lost. Simplifying it, it's 25%. So that'd be a quarter of the days are lost. So without knowing how many days, then I can't work out how many days are lost because I don't know the full percentage. And it's the same with people as well in the departments. I don't know whether there's 2 people in one department and 50% of them are off, which is there's only 1 left, kind of thing. It would be not a difficult task, because obviously you've got the numbers to be able to work out the percentages in the first place. But I think that would help me to personalise it a little bit more, to make me realise we're talking about people, not figures. And that 25% there, the quarter of 100 days, 25 out of 100 days, it might put a different reflection on it if I knew the whole. But I don't know whether it's something you can do or it's something that's worthwhile. I know you will work with percentages because but it's difficult for us to work with percentages, I think, and equate those to staff, to people, to their circumstances. And it's like when we were talking about different roles have different, are we more susceptible to certain things? Might be the chief executive goes out every weekend and teaches hordes of youths, Scottish youths, how to play football. So when you try to link it with somebody's working life, you've also got to link it with somebody's personal life. They might go rock climbing at the weekend, and that's where they've got the neck injury from, not from lifting a person and putting them into the recovery position. So there's lots and lots of things that impact on why. And it's a huge thing for you to log, because you must end up with so many categories there. And we'll find out, what part of the neck and what part of the back. And yes, so you are keeping an eye on it, but it would make it a lot easier for me if I could see the numbers rather than percentage, so I could link them to people.
Yeah, I appreciate, take that on board. Yeah. I'll give some thoughts how we can bring it to life, if you like, to a certain extent. Yeah. In the next meeting, whether we do some case study. Yeah, let me kind of dwell on that. But you're right. I suppose just to give you comfort that we do treat all of these in the HR kind of service. These are individuals. Yeah, at the end of the day, whilst it gets rolled up into percentages and it gets rolled up into kind of financial impacts and stuff, but we do know that there are people at the end of the kind of end of all of these numbers that need support and careful kind of management. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Cook.
I'd like to apologise for all the questions I'm asking. It's out of character for me. Just prompted me there for a question that I'd like to ask, a direct question. With the department, if there's a trend of regular absence and it's mental health or whatever absence it is, do you identify that and do a deep dive into that to see what the issue is? For instance, it could be bullying. It could be that the manager's not performing. There's something else going on in there. Is that something you experienced?
That's largely what we use those stress risk assessments to do, because they can reveal all sorts of things, because actually the staff fill out a questionnaire. Yeah, it's anonymous, it comes back in, and then that, they may tease out lots of, it could be workload, it could be relationships between colleagues, between managers, all of those types of stuff. And then we would kind of put an intervention in place. Yeah, with that particular team or with that particular service. Sometimes we've got within HR, we've got our organisational development function, some really good individuals who can just go in and maybe do a bit of teamwork and just help them to kind of organise themselves, but all sorts of kind of different interventions you can do just to help kind of maybe make things easy for them. So yeah, that's the main, but we do use the numbers and things to think, there's a lot going on in that team, that service, that department. Maybe we just want to have a bit more of a look, yes, to what's going on there. So hopefully we can spot those kind of things.
Thank you. Any final questions? Great. So we are asked to note the content of the Workforce Quarter 2 report for 2025-2026. Does everybody agree, please?
Agree.
Thank you. Okay, so item 9 is a report on the Organisational Change Policy and Procedure Action Plans. This is on pages 39 to 44 of your agenda packs. Damien Buckley, Democratic Services Officer, will present the report. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. The purpose of this report is to present the committee with an update of current action plans which contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of progress on their implementation. And there are 2 appendices to this report, one outlining completed action plans and one outlining ones that are underway. And members are just asked to note the content of the report and the appendices. Thank you.
Yeah, have we got any questions, please? Okay, so we are asked to note the updates provided on the on the current action plans which contain provision for compulsory redundancy and details of progress in their implementation. Does everybody agree, please?
Agree.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, so date of future meetings. Meetings of the committee in 2026 are scheduled to take place at 10 o'clock on the following dates. We've got the 5th of February 2026, 21st of May, the 10th of September and the 10th of December. As mentioned at the start of the meeting, there are no urgent items. And now we move on to the exclusion of the press and the public. The next item is to be considered in private. I therefore move that under section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following item of business on the grounds that it involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 4, 5 and 10 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.